Hi, this is Jenny Baldwin, the Elementary Math Instructional Coach, and today we are going to talk about the Math Plus Purple and Unit 5, which covers whole number division cents. This unit is a fun unit. It is very targeted to important foundational skills in third grade, and what's important about this unit is that students really need to think about how division is related to multiplication and how they are inverse operations. Multiplication and division, even though they're taught separately here in the OLS, they really are things that should be taught together as you continue to talk about multiplication and division from now on, so that students continue to see that relationship of how multiplication and division are simply opposites of each other. And you can use what you know from one thing to solve the other. So let's head on over to the student activity book, and I'm going to go to the very first page of whole number division cents. Remember, you can open up this side tab to review all of those units. This unit is very, like I said, very appropriate to what students should be able to master in third grade. The thing that's important is that we want to use a variety of models. When it says model and explain division, we don't just want students to just answer with flashcards. We want them to be able to model and explain what it means to divide. When this says use repeated subtraction to solve the problem, basically you could start out with a number line that goes up to 18 and have a student subtract 6 and then 6 more and then 6 more and then 6 more. How many times or hops did it take to subtract 6? And they would see that it took 3 hops until you got all the way back down to 0. You could do the same thing on a number line with a larger number such as 36 and do a hop backwards of 9 and then 9 again and 9 again. You could also use some sort of manipulatives and start with 36, take away 9, take away another group of 9, take away another group of 9, and take away another group of 9 until you end up with nothing left in the group of 36. How many groups did you end up with? And the students would see that they had 4. This is where it says use circle blocks to solve the problem. So basically that's kind of like this. Instead of counting back, they're going to divide it up within the circles. So we have 35 and we divide it into 7 circles. How many are in each circle? Draw a sketch to show how to solve this problem. This is important when you have a problem written the opposite way. So right here we have, the equal sign and then the quotient coming at the end. Here we have the quotient coming at the beginning. But what we need to reiterate is that the equal sign means the same as. This number that's missing is the same as 18 divided by 3. It doesn't matter the order. So this quotient could come at the end, it could come at the beginning. The outcome is always the same. So they can work out 18 divided by 3 and draw a model, whatever they prefer, whether it be a number line or whether it be circles and dividing things into circles, or whether it be an array, and then they could come up with the answer to that solution. As you go through, you'll see that it does give specific ways to solve it at first, and then, but what's most important is that the students learn all of these different ways and then uses the one that they feel most comfortable with in the end. But also it's important that they understand if a model is represented to them, that they can see that that means division, that they are doing repeated subtraction, or they are dividing things into groups. This is one of the most important things in all of the unit, and I'll show you some resources about this after we go through the OLS, but it says which operation should be used. Sometimes you may have a word problem. This, of course, isn't a word problem. It's just a basic equation, but sometimes there's numbers in a problem and we want to know, well, what would you use? Addition, multiplication, subtraction, division. We really need to talk about how all of these are different. And even though multiplication and division are related, they do end up with different quantities based on what you're asking, and the same for addition and subtraction. Right here it shows different models to show 15 divided by 3. So we want 3 equal groups. How many are in each group? And so helping your student understand what that means and being able to remember that when you divide, you want to strive for equal groups. Sometimes there might be a remainder, and third grade, you're not going to necessarily focus on remainders and things not being able to divide easily, but I do think it's important for students to realize that not everything is divided by every number. For instance, 15 may be divisible by 5, but it's not divisible by 4, but it is divisible by 3. So playing with manipulatives and talking about those things and showing how not everything is always divisible by something else, and sometimes things aren't always going to be equal, and sometimes there will be something left over. Now, in third grade, you will not necessarily see division written as a fraction or in this model right here, such as the standard algorithm model, but it doesn't hurt to introduce these types to show students that when you have 12 divided by 4, you end up with 3 equal groups. A fraction is basically the same. We have 12 divided by 4, or 12 of the 4. Now, since 12 is bigger than 4, that means we're going to have more than one whole. We have 3 wholes. So showing students how to model that is fine, but again, this is a little bit more enrichment. And this is okay to show your student that the 12, this is more like a division house. We have our quotient here and our divisor, our dividend, our divisor, and then our quotient. But we don't necessarily want students to always think of using a standard procedure and algorithm to answer division. We want students to understand what division means before we introduce abstract concepts such as these. So as you go through, you will experience problems that could be a little confusing to explain, such as, what if you have 9 and you divide it by 0? Is that possible? Well, no, it isn't possible. You can't divide something by 0. So as you go through the OLS, you'll talk about that. Now, you can divide 4 into one group, and you're still going to end up with 4 in the group. So one group of 4 is 4. But you can't necessarily divide something by 0. Now, when we think about this, we know that multiplication is the inverse operation of division. So if we ended up with 4 here as our quotient, we would say 4 times 1 is 4. Well, would 9 divided by 0 equal 9? Would 9 divided by 0 equal 0? It's just not even a possible thing to answer. You can't divide something no times, because if you did the inverse, 0 times 0, that wouldn't equal 9. 9 times 0, that wouldn't equal 9. So when you cannot divide by 0. And that's the same if you think back to these different models up at the top. You would never have a 0 here as the divisor. You would never have a 0 as the denominator in a fraction. Those types of things are not possible. So it's great to kind of talk about that with your child. As we go in, we're going to continue to talk about division as sharing into equal groups, and it's nice that they've implemented word problems so that students can decipher what the dividend would be, what the divisor would be, and then you can talk about the quotient is the answer to a division problem. And please, encourage your child to get out that paper and draw the sketches, not just answer the problems in their head. We want students to not just get the answer, we want students to be able to model it and explain what it actually means. As we progress, we're going to continue with division as sharing, and this type of problem is really good because it starts out with an array which they're familiar with multiplication, but it says Beverly wanted to solve this problem. 30 avocado trees were planted in 5 rows. There were the same number of trees in each row. How many trees were planted in each row? So it says that we know the total amount. We know there's 30 in all, and we know there's 5 rows, but which one of these would represent 30? So we have 5 rows here with 6 in each row. We have 5 columns. We have 5 with 5 in each row. So we want students to be able to relate these arrays, even though you usually think of arrays as a multiplication problem. We want them to think of the total amount and divide it out. So we have 5 times 6 equals 30. Or there's 5, or 30 divided by 5 equals 6 in each row. This again correlates right with the relating multiplication and division and about fact families. So there are lots of fact family ideas on the internet. We know that a fact family, except for doubles facts, has 4 different equations that can be written. We have 5 times 2 is 10, 2 times 5 is 10. That shows the commutative property of multiplication, and it doesn't matter which order. And then what is important to show is that when you multiply, you have your factors and you end up with a product. The product here is 10. When we divide in this fact family, we're starting with that, and that becomes our dividend. We divide by one of the factors to end up with our quotient. So we have our dividend, divisor, quotient. And we still, regardless of how we divide, we always want to keep that 10 right here. Then we will this time divide by 2 and have 5. So you can build like a fact family house, and you can see that all the members of the family are still the same, the 5, the 2, and the 10. But we've written 2 multiplication problems and we've written 2 division problems. Here is another example of explaining this sketch. So we can multiply, we could have 8 times 4, or we could divide, where we start out with the whole number and divide by a certain amount. And this is a great way to see if your student really understands that you always want to start with the whole amount and divide it up. So even though the numbers are the same, it could get very tricky, and it's a great conversation starter with your student. We're going to continue to talk about the inverse operations. Here's more about fact families. And again, this is the key component of this whole unit, just relating multiplication to division. When a student doesn't know their division facts, they just need to think of that multiplication fact that would help them solve the division fact. So for example, if they have 63 divided by 9, they need to think, what times 9 equals 63? So use what they know to solve what they don't know. That's one of the strategies that this unit is hopefully going to encourage your child to implement. There's tons of things on the inverse operation and using what you don't know to solve for what you do know. So for example, here we have 18 divided by what is 3. So let's think 3 times what equals 18. Well, I know 3 times 6 equals 18. So the answer would be 8, or A. The story problems component is really important, like I said, because it does encourage students to apply what they know in real-world situations. What's important, though, is for students to realize is it's not going to tell you you need to divide. Of course, in this unit, all the problems are division problems, but I will share a resource with you in a minute so that you can begin to review not only division word problems, but multiplication, subtraction, and addition word problems as well, so that when they work this out on their own, that they will pick the right sign. And it's not just about finding a key word, it's about understanding what the question is asking. Here we have, the store is having a sale on pencils. Rosa buys 4 stencils for $12. How much does one stencil cost? So we know the total. We know that she buys 4, so we need to divide 12 by 4 to find out how much each one costs. Students, without the word saying please divide this, may not know to divide, so it's important to work with them on a variety of different types of problems so that they understand what the problem is even asking for. There are quite a few problems on with word problems, and it says, what are you being asked to find? What division number sentence can be used to solve this problem? What is the answer? What is the answer to the division problem? And then what is the answer to the story problem? So sometimes things have multiple steps, in which we're going to find out in the core focus as well. This one is great and is awesome for the creative students because it says write a division story problem about finding the cost of a single item. And this is where it definitely goes into higher order thinking, where we want students to come up with their own story problem that could match a fact. And this will truly show if a child understands that if we have something like 6 times 8 is 48, they could write a story problem that says a farmer buys food for the cows on his farm. He pays $48 for 6 bags of food. What is the cost of each bag of food? So being able to create and write your own problems in a journal is very highly encouraged. So this entire lesson encourages students to write their own story problems. And this could be something they could do as a game and have other members of their family even try to solve their own story problems. When you get to the core focus, this is when it comes into two-step division problems. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to necessarily divide twice. It means that there's 2 steps in the word problem. They may have to add, they may have to subtract, they may have to multiply, and before they divide. So this says Lewis has a bag of 27 marbles and a bag of 43 marbles. He wants to divide all the marbles into 5 equal groups. How many marbles will be in each group? Well, first of all, he has 2 different bags, so he needs to combine the total. So he needs to add 27 to 43 and then divide. So whatever the total here, then he can divide by 5. So two-step word problems are definitely a little bit tricky, and like I said, they may contain 2 different types of operations that the students are supposed to implement into the word problem. Now, as you continue to go through the unit, you will get to the extended response. That unit has been skipped for you, so if it has been skipped, please don't unskip it, because that is going to be the second math portfolio for third grade. You will notice that usually, so for example, if I went to Unit 4 here in the OLS, you will see that there's extended problems solving activities that you could print, and there's the answer key. But when you go to the 5th unit on division, there is no printout for the extended problem solving and reasoning. That is because we will push that out to you and your student later on when it's time for the second portfolio, and that will probably come after the holidays. So right now, your student soon, later in October, will be pushed out the first portfolio, which is right here with the 3rd unit. And you'll notice again with Unit 3, there was not an extended response. This is something that will be submitted to the teacher and we will push out. The reason we are encouraging you not to unskip the unit is because we may have tweaked that lesson a little bit and modified it so that it really truly meets the standards and what we want your student to learn. So if the units are skipped, keep them skipped, and if it says submit to the teacher, we will definitely send out directions for that so that you'll know exactly what to do. Now, in addition to the OLS, we do have lots of other online opportunities and resources to share with you. One of my favorites is this K-5 Math Teaching Resources. And when you go to this 3rd grade page, you will see that all of the standards, and you will also see how they talk about multiplication, they talk about division, but then they also have lots of activities on standards that relate multiplication and division. Like I said, these 2 concepts and operations need to be kind of integrated together so that students understand their relationship. When you click on any of these links, they go to an activity related to that standard. These are great opportunities for you to print out and work with your student, or to have them write in their math journal and complete some of these task-based learning activities that aren't just multiple choice, but they really do help your student think about math. I also like that they give suggestions on books to read that you can check out at your local library. One book that was pushed out to everyone last week was called the story was called Divide and Ride, and it was about kids going to a carnival and how they had 11 students or friends and how they needed to divide up in equal groups. And as we all know, 11 isn't a number that's easily divisible by certain things. So if 2 kids were in a seat, you can't divide 11 by 2. If 3 kids are in a seat, you can't divide 11 by 3. And so the story goes on to show how they needed to regroup and invite new friends to join the group so they would have an even number that was easily divisible. If I click on the example of the doorbell rang right here, and if you decided to check out that book at your local library, When you click on that link, it will open up to activities and questions that you can ask your child as you read the story. Again, these are highly encouraged activities. This is a great story because it talks about I think it's a grandmother who makes cookies for her 2 grandchildren, and so there's 2 of them, and they have 12 cookies, but the doorbell rings over and over and over, and so more and more children come, and they have to divide those 12 cookies over and over and over, and it's a great way to model how division changes or the quotient changes based on the dividend. So we still had the same, or divisor, we still had the same amount of cookies, but we had to divide them in many different ways. So as you go through this resource, definitely check out some of these books and some of the links that provide a great enrichment activity, as well as further learning that your kids may relate to. They may not relate to every single lesson in the OLS, but sometimes they will relate to a story. So feel free to add in these extra components and use an eclectic approach to teaching division. Students definitely don't all learn in the same way. You will find tons and tons of activities and practice links. This is a fun game. I have Who Has, so your whole family, including aunts and uncles, can all sit around and play a game of I Have Has Who Has that can be printed off. And then here it gets to extra practice with 2-step word problems. So this is a great resource. Another excellent way for you to know if your child has truly mastered the standard is to go to a resource like this. This happens to be from New York, and this is a performance task, and it talks about someone selling tubs of cookie dough. So they know that chocolate chip cookie dough is $5 a tub, peanut butter cookie dough is $4 a tub, oatmeal cookie dough is $3 a tub. This is a performance task that definitely shows whether a child can do multiplication and division word problems and understand the difference between both. So it says Jill sold 2 tubs of oatmeal cookie dough. How much did she raise? So the students may simply do addition and say 5 or 3 plus 3 to get 6, or they may write a multiplication problem to show 2 times 3 is 6. And then it says she sold 4 tubs of peanut butter cookie dough and 4 tubs of chocolate chip cookie dough. How much money did she raise in all? Show how you figured it out. So after you go through a few simple problems, then it gets a little more complex, and it starts out with the total. Jade sold only peanut butter cookie dough, and she raised $32. How many tubs did she sell? So if you look back, we know that peanut butter cookie dough is $4 a tub, and we know that she raised a total of $32. How could we figure that out? So it's important that students know that this is where we would use division. We start with our total, divide it by 4, and end up with 8. Or we could use repeated subtraction. We have 32 minus 4 minus 4 minus 4 over and over until we get down to 0. So this link that I'll put in the newsletter is a great resource. Another great resource that I continue to emphasize is Learnzillion. If you have not created your own free account, definitely do that. Then when you create a free account, go to the Common Core Navigator tab. When you go to the Common Core Navigator tab, you will want to click on 3rd grade, and then from there go to the Operations and Algebraic Thinking. So click on 3rd grade, go to Operations and Algebraic Thinking, and you can see that all of these standards focus on multiplication and division, and every single one of these folders has a series of multiple videos for your student to watch. Right here are the problem-solving ones that we haven't quite gotten into because this is more with patterns. So focus from 3OA7 and all the way up, and all of these will focus on multiplication and division. And last but not least, I also want to talk about our excellent resource that we have called Triumph. When you go to the bookshelf feature, you can simply select the grade level and the content that you're working on. So I selected Math 3rd grade, and one of the books that I'm going to talk about today is called the Coach Performance Book. And teachers are going to be assigning some of the things so that you will have the opportunity for extra practice that's graded. This Common Core Coach Performance Book is not, or Performance Coach is not something that can be graded, but it can be printed. And so this is something that you can access on your own. But for instance, if you go to Introducing Division, and then later you can talk about solving division problems, you can encourage your student to talk through a lot of these problems with you. The reason I love this performance coach is because even though we haven't seen the Georgia Milestones assessment, I do feel like that a lot of these questions are going to be types of problems that require thinking and reasoning outside of just multiple choice. So for example, on page 6 it says, decide if you can use division to solve each problem. Select yes or no. So you can say, it's not just saying, okay, 21 divided by 3 is what? It's asking students to understand what division means. So let's look at A. There are 21 students in the class. They are sitting at tables of 3 for a science experiment. How many tables of students are there? Could we solve this with division? Yes or no? They could even draw this out. They could put draw 21 students divided by 3 tables, and yes, it would show us that there are 7 students at each table. Well, let's look at B. Bethany has 12 rocks in her collection. She put rocks in 2 boxes. One box has 3 rocks. How many rocks are in the other box? Is that a division problem? No, that's more like a subtraction problem. We have 12, we took away 3, how many's in the other box? So this is great for reinforcing what division actually means. Here is an excellent problem for students to really explain their thinking. We have a model, and it says it says Miss Cooper drew the area model shown below on the board. Cody wrote 36 divided by 4 is 9, and Isabella wrote 36 divided by 9 is 4. Who's correct? Explain your thinking. Well, maybe both people are correct. Could this model be used to represent both? I think so. We have 36 in all. We could divide it into 4 equal groups, 1, 2, 3, 4 going across, and there would be 9 in each group, or we could divide it into 9 equal groups going up and down, and there would be 4 in each group. So it's important for students to realize that it doesn't matter if we have the 36 and we divide it by 4 first or 9 first. This model represents both ways just fine. So as we continue to go through, there's more modeling. There's a typical ABCD type of question, but the thing that's different, it says mark all that apply. This could be a real tricky component on the Georgia Milestones because maybe there is more than one answer that is appropriate, and this is also something they may experience in Study Island. Reading carefully and making sure they understand the directions is really, really important. As we continue to go through, this is another great problem because the numbers are the same. We have a 10 and a 2 in every single problem, or a 10 and a 5. But when are we supposed to subtract? When are we supposed to divide? When are we supposed to multiply? And when are we supposed to divide again? But you can see that the divisor is different between the two problems. So this is a matching type activity. And then it gets into TrueFalse, which is another type of representation that our students, if they don't see it this year, they may see it in the future. And this one model, all of these questions go with that one model. It says the quotient of 48 and 6 tells how many stars are in each row. Is that true or false? The product of 6 and 8 tells how many stars are in each row. You can divide 48 by 8 to find out how many stars are in the array. Now with that, it says you can divide, that would not be false because it says you can divide 48 by 8 to find out how many stars are in the array. Well, in the array, there's 48. So that kind of went backwards. So some of these are very tricky. And it says the quotient or the answer of 8 and 6 tells you how many rows are in the array. Would it tell you how many rows are in the array, or would it tell you how many total stars are in the array? And then lastly, here is where students can kind of create their own problem. It says Mark used 16 square tiles to make an area model. He made 4 equal rows. Write a number sentence to show how many tiles are in each row. And then here we have a table, and it says the table shows the sections of fence that a store sells. The sections are different colors and different lengths. So we have white, tan, and brown. Mr. Kwan wants to build a fence that is 30 feet long. How many sections of fence should Mr. Kwan buy? Write the number sentence to show your answer. So there could be different options. If he picks a white fence, well, he would need 6 times 5. If he picked a tan fence, he would need 5 times 6. If he picked a brown fence, he would need 3 times 10, and all of those would equal 30. And then here it says, look at the number sentence. 24 divided by 4 equals 6. Write a situation for this division sentence. This directly correlates to what the students did in the OLS. And they can come up with their own story problem to write something that would match 24 divided by 4 equals 6. So again, this is one of my favorite books in Triumph Online. When your student logs into Triumph Online in the near future, they will have assignments, and they are optional, but the reason we are picking these specific assignments is because we are targeting the heavily weighted content areas. And you can see if I click on assignments for this mock student, there's nothing there at the moment, but in the future you will have the name of the class, the name of the assignment, and then after you complete the assignment, it will give a score. Some questions will be open-ended where your student can type in the answer. Some will be multiple choice. So there will be some things that the teacher will need to log in and grade as well. But we are very fortunate to have Triumph Online. The bookshelf feature is always available, and it has access to all the books. The only problem is these books aren't, the resources are just printable and not gradable. The assignments here that we will provide to you may sometimes be a benchmark assessment that really will help you put standards together and see if your child has mastered those, or it could be a very focused assessment on a specific standard. It could be something that your teacher wants you to use for a small group ticket out the door to check for understanding. So definitely take advantage of these resources that we are offering. Students who've used Triumph Online in the past did traditionally or most often fare better on the end of the year assessment than others because they did practice outside of the OLS and Study Island, and they were able to use things and see things represented in a different way. It is excellent review. When you get to the unit checkpoint, every problem on this unit checkpoint is very similar to everything that has been learned in the OLS. And remember, this extended problem solving lesson is going to be skipped for Unit 5 until the Unit 2 portfolio is pushed your way. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy a lot of these resources. And don't forget to go to some of those activities and go to the local library and check out some books on division and act these stories out with your student. Thanks so much.